Hi, I'm Amy Shannon from Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast, where stories speak, voices matter, and words come alive. If you are following this on Spotify, please follow the podcast. Um, Now, the interviewees uh, have the option of having an audio only podcast session or a video podcast session. This is a video podcast session, and I hope that you enjoy it. It will also be shown on YouTube. So if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Thank you. There we go. Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy Shannon, and welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast, conversations, revelations, and inspirations behind the books. You never know where the conversation will lead us, so let's find out. Tonight we have a guest with us, and this is a spotlight episode, so it will be a full hour. Thank you for joining us. Will you please introduce yourself and let people know how to connect with you?
Amy, thank you so much for having me on, and I'm most honored. You and I have been in contact for several years. You are a prolific reviewer, and you graciously have reviewed pretty much everything that I've published, which is around 30 books so far.
Yeah.
And I am an author, poet, actor, narrator, all-round creative genius.
That is true.
I identify as a taco-eating gringo living somewhere south of Texas under a blue roof. Most of all, I am a man of God. I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. And there's never been a time when he has been more needed and cherished than in these end times that we are entering. And because of that relationship, because I am in Jesus, I have the confidence to go before the throne of the Most High, of the Creator, and call on him now to send forth his light and truth to guide us and bring us to his holy mountain, the place where he dwells. From heaven we decree upon our conversation, you and me, Amy, the participants and upon the listeners, the promise of the Most High: do not touch my anointed ones, do my prophets no harm. And we bestow upon it this promise, that it shall be seed falling in good soil. So be it, and agreed.
Very powerful, and thank you, because I know that so many times you have been, you know, I I love you. You speak your mind. You're a wonderful human being. You have this powerful faith, and not a lot of people have that. And faith can be in anything you want it to be, but when you have that, you also have a purpose. And there are times when, unfortunately, you speaking out about whatever subject, and it doesn't even really, you have a broad subjects that you have, you are a genius in so many ways, and you share your information with people, and then sometimes they shut you down. And that, it really makes me angry, and I'm not that kind of person that likes to be angry. So I try to fix it for you. If you've been on a podcast where they didn't air your episode, or they cut you off, and the content of your stuff was just removed, and I will always keep this forum open so that you can come on my show, talk about whatever is on your mind, what's going on in the world. And the truth is that, you don't have to have the same belief systems, but I think as humanity, we all believe in something, whether it's religion or even just faith in ourselves or whatever it possibly could be. And sometimes religion and politics seem to go hand in hand sometimes. And that's not something that, I don't discuss my politics or my views on religion. Some people, they think I would be crazy. Um, but, I believe that everybody has their own version of God. That's my opinion. And I believe people move on in a different realm, spiritual, whatever, after they pass. And I know because I've experienced visits from my mother, my grandmother, um, and they had a great faith, their own faith, and they taught me to have not just faith in myself, but in something that is better, more than just me as a person. So I open up my doors to you anytime.
Yeah, well, you've reminded me of something that Jesus said, that he who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. She who receives a righteous man, which you have done. And why do I say righteous? Because I am clothed in the righteousness of Jesus. It is a gift. And that helps with the perspective, because you were talking about politics, and we have this arrangement, we have this theater, that we have this political theater that is designed to draw our attention and focus and anger and dissension, so that we don't look at the real orchestrators of that theater. And we have this phraseology of left wing and right wing, but I see that as a horizontal arena that has been created of contention between different sides of the political spectrum. But our true battle is not a horizontal contention between left or right or center or whatever it is. The true battle is a vertical one of life over death, creation over destruction, and love over fear.
That's true. And one thing that I've been just kind of like almost a campaign, be kind, a kindness campaign. That's what I've been doing. And recently, I actually tomorrow it goes live. I wrote a children's book called Be Kind, and there's like 5 different stories in the book about ways that people are kind, even when they, even standing up to bullies or hatred, that kind of thing. So I was inspired by another author, and she wrote a book on kindness and how it affects you as a person. And she wrote a children's book, and after I talked to her, she inspired me to take my campaign one more step and write a children's book. And I grew up with values. I perceive myself as a very ethical person. I do my best to be kind, not to say that I've had bad days, um, but I don't call them out, and a lot of times I have been confronted with, oh, because you're in a wheelchair or you're disabled, you're in my way, get out of my way. And then I just, I take that with a grain of salt and I just smile and I just move on or say, have a nice day. And, something like that.
Are you in
People,
a wheelchair, Amy?
yes, I am. I
Didn't
can
know that.
walk. I can walk a little bit
Mm.
around my apartment. When I have to go out, I have trouble. I have functional neurological disorder caused by my domestic violence issue in or 20 years ago. And it's now affecting my legs and my feet, which I can only feel part of them. Um, and when they hurt, I can walk around because I can actually feel it. But then there are times when I just don't feel it at all and I fall down. So I do use a couple types of wheelchairs depending on where I'm going. But
From
yeah,
heaven we restore you, sister, that you are restored on earth. The crooked paths are made straight.
thank you.
Much love to you, Amy.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. And I had been surprised that it's, you shouldn't be shocked, but I'm always more surprised when someone is nice than when they're not. And yesterday, um, I had a doctor's appointment, and then I had to stop at the pharmacy, and I can use my wheelchair because they're all like right in my vicinity where I live. And then I had to go to the market. So I had gone across the street to the market, and I was trying to get my bags together before I went into the market. And this woman came over to me and she's like, I see you go around when you're out. She goes, I just want to tell you you're amazing.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And then on my way back home, it had snowed. And when I hit a little patch of snow, and my wheelchair I had to use is over 200 pounds. So it got stuck. So I basically did what you do with a car, roll it back and forth
Hmm.
and trying to get unstuck. And then I was just about to call my sons to come and help me. And this man who was driving by, he pulled over, he hurried over to me and helped me get unstuck. He
Hmm.
said, I saw you struggling and I just want to help you.
Yeah.
And he helped me and I said, thank you. And he said, you're welcome. And he was off. And I was just like, wow, that never happens. I was so surprised. I was almost in tears because it's hard for me to leave my house because
Yeah.
of, people, I'm in their way, or I'm afraid that I'm going to have a PTSD moment, or I'm going to have an awake seizure. I have those sometimes, and I don't want to be in public when those happen.
Hmm.
Um, so I have high anxiety when I want to leave the house. So, but I make myself do stuff, and I try to help other people more than I try to
Yeah.
help myself. So,
You've reminded me of the miracle at Bethesda when a man is trying to get down into the healing waters, because when an angel stirs the waters, people can get in and be healed. And he can't get down there because he has no one to help him. And then Jesus says to him, pick up your mat and walk. And you found someone to help you yesterday.
yeah, I was like so frustrated and upset that, it was just a little patch of snow, but it just wanted to go that one way. And
And
I just felt so blessed after that. I mean, my sons would have come right away and helped me, but um, I was trying to do it myself because there's not a lot of things I can do myself, and the things that I do, that I can do, I try to always do them. Like I can still do laundry, and
hmm,
so I'll offer to my sons. I'm like, I'll do your laundry for you, because they do so much more for me. And then I have to deal with my father. He's still end stage dementia, and it's just when we think it's close to the end, he keeps going, and he's just in a broken shell. And I say broken because he falls, he breaks bones, but they can't do anything because he takes off the splints, or he breaks open the casts and throws them at people, and so they heal incorrectly. And now he's trying to eat his clothes. So I do not
Eat
know.
his clothes.
Yes, he will literally take off his clothes, sometimes in the middle of the dining room, sometimes in his room, and try to eat them.
Oh,
And I just, I want my dad to be at peace.
yeah.
And it's very
Now
hard.
your baseball hat, which says "Be kind," is that some of your own merchandise, or did you
Yes.
just find that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I made it. And I also have t-shirts that I do the same thing. They
All
have,
right.
thank you.
Okay. Buy Amy's merchandise, people. Support her. Support her work.
I try to do what I can and I can still talk, I can still read. And so every day I
You
wake
can
up.
still do a lot. I mean, it has amazed me from the beginning. Your Well, you first of all, you're prolific because of all the books that you continue to review, and you champion the independent authors. You're not just running after the the big five publishers or whatever. You really want to champion people and you want to help get their words out. And you also write your own books, so it's not bad.
It's what I like to do. It gives me purpose, and
Sure.
that's something that I think everybody needs is some type of purpose. No matter what, if you have limitations or you don't have limitations, you have to have a purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning and get dressed. Even if I feel horrible in the morning, I still get out of bed, get dressed, make my bed. Even if I just don't, I feel terrible and I just want to lay down, my bed's made and I have my nap blanket. So that's something I make sure that I do. Because, and if I forget sometimes, my sons are here to remind me, push through, mom. You've made it this far. So that's what I have great champions with with three of my sons, and two of them, their spouses. So I mean, you have written a lot of work yourself, and I've seen. I mean, I fell in love with it from the very beginning and loved your epic poetry. And what drew me to that was because I'm a huge fan of Shakespeare and I read Shakespeare for fun. Some people are like, but you read Shakespeare for fun? Yes. Shakespeare and Whitman, I read them because I enjoy them. And then now my father, I have his copy of a book that I had bought him for the complete works of Robert Burns. And I was going through some of my books and reorganizing, and I found it, and I had forgot that I had it, um, because when they moved him to his current facility, he couldn't have anything that he could throw at people, so he couldn't have books. I gave him magazines because they weren't as dangerous when he could read. But I got his copy and I started reading it, and I was like, now I know why my dad, that was like his favorite. Besides my work, he used to carry one of my books that I wrote of poetry, and I gave it to him. Whenever we'd go out, it was paperback, so he'd fold it and put it in his back pocket. So he always had something to read. In this past July, I took that book and then I recreated it and I added my father's writing to it. And it's called All of Our Yesterdays. And it's dedicated, and I share work that my father had wrote. And I was very
Trying
surprised.
to remember, there was some lines of Robbie Burns. May the best you've ever seen be the worst you'll ever see. May the mouse ne'er lee a gurnal with a teardrop in its ee. May a lamb keep blithely reeking till you're old enough to die. That's as much of it as I remember. I saw it on a tea towel once.
I love it. My father, when I was little, or younger. We didn't always get along, but he had found, and I don't know where he found it. I think it was in a magazine or something, and it was a picture of a rose, and it had Robert Burns' poem, Red Rose, Red Rose, and he gave it to me, and I've had it forever. And that just always, reminds me of my dad. And then when I was reading the book, I'm like, I just could hear, because my dad would write poetry, and he would write it the same kind of format that Burns would, by adding, like a single quote where a letter should be. Or he once wrote a poem about two bridges. Uh, there was an old bridge, and where we lived, or where he lived at the time, and they were building a new bridge to replace it. So and he spelled all old, AULD.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like old bridge, new bridge. And it was like a conversation between the old bridge and the new bridge on why the new bridge was taking over. And I was like, only my dad would think of something to write about that.
Yeah, well, you reminded me when you were, I wanted to share something, because when you were talking about love, and I was thinking about the many ways that love manifests, and I imagine a scene in my epic poem Elijah where Abdiel, so I've given the angel my name, where Abdiel is describing his encounter with Satan. So Abdiel's origin story is that Satan commands his legions to rebel against the Most High, and only one of that multitude of angels, a seraph, challenges him and rebukes him. And his name is Abdiel, and he leaves the apostate ranks of Satan and joins the warriors who are loyal to the Most High. And then when the battle ensues, it is Abdiel who strikes the first blow, because he sees Satan has surrounded himself with cherubim as if he were God.
Mm.
And this incenses Abdiel, and he goes for him and he strikes him. And so in this conversation between the angel Abdiel and the prophet Elijah, I imagine Elijah asking him about the history of this battle in heaven. And I've got a quote here, because this is what Abdiel says to him. When battle came, the goad of false reproach had so incensed me that I did not see the thick array of troops in my approach to Satan, only his temerity. Into that blow I dealt upon his crest of which you spoke, I poured my love. Yes, love. For love is stronger far than death, and blessed is he who wields it with all power above. And that reminds me too of when Jesus whips the money changers out of the temple, that it is an act of love, because he says, zeal for my Father's house consumes me. It is his love for the Father, it is love for the true temple of God that goads him into cleansing it and purging it of all the filth and the scum and the money changers. And so this is something I talk about in my books, is this prophetic mission. And it is time for us to wield our prophetic authority again. And I refer to Elijah and I refer to Moses as exemplars of speaking truth to power. Now, that phrase of speaking truth to power is used a lot.
Right.
But usually when people say it, what they mean is speaking truth about power to each other. But Elijah wields the truth by getting in power's face. So for instance, this is after King Ahab and Queen Jezebel have conspired to get an innocent man stoned to death. They falsely accuse him, get him stoned to death,
Right.
so that Ahab can take over his vineyard. And this is when Elijah gets up in King Ahab's face and says, because of this, every one of the royal line will be slaughtered. Those who die in the country will be food for the crows. Those who die in the city will be food for the dogs. And Jezebel herself will be dog's meat at the wall of Jezreel. So as you know from reading those books, I've got that scene both in the epic poem Elijah and also in a novella called Jezebel's Lament, where she is telling her side of the story. It's a fun story.
Yes, I really enjoy your stories and the way that they are they are poetic, and they speak your truths, and they come from your heart and your passion. And I could tell that just I knew it from the first book that I read of yours. And I do go back and reread them.
Well,
They
I'm honored for that. Yeah, because you get through so much material. The fact that you would take that time to go back and reread something I wrote, as opposed to going on to the next book, when you have such a long waiting list of books on your library waiting to be read that authors are sharing with you. So for you to read something twice, that says a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, probably more than twice too. And sometimes it's just, I when I think about what you just talked about, and you're right. Nowadays, people may talk to each other about what they dislike or like about whatever the powers that are above
Shouldn't be.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the control that they think they have, and they haven't just conquered one thing. They want to conquer the world in a way to make it so it's like their world and not anyone else's. And when I think about that, and I wonder how it is so easy for people to hate or be greedy or both. They want to rise above people, not to lead, but to control. And there is a difference between leaders and, I should say, dictators, because leaders want to lead and dictators want to have that control. And I find
Jesus gave us the model of the leader, of being a leader, because he said those who humble themselves will be exalted, and it's the servant that he champions. If you want to lead, be a servant. And that's not at all in the mindset of so-called leaders today, is it?
No, it's not. And from I find that being kind and being loving and helpful without expecting that in return, it's so I find it so easy. And I find that being angry and hateful, that takes so much effort out of a person, and it makes them ugly. And I'm not talking about physically, but it makes them an ugly person on the inside, because that hate and anger has turned them inside out. And maybe they have always been that way. Maybe they learned that behavior, or they were born with it. However it is, I cannot see how you want to live a life like that, when if we had more loving people, kindness, and we weren't surprised when people are being nice to us, and people don't just think about themselves. And everybody should think about themselves and care for themselves, because if you don't, you can't care for anyone else. But you shouldn't be so into yourself that you forget about the people that are around you.
Well, Jesus encapsulated it when he said, when they came to him and said, what is the greatest commandment? He said to love the Lord your God with all of your heart and all of your mind, and to love others as you love yourself. So that principle, that one, it's called the golden rule, that is the foundation on which the law rests, the true law rests, not the legislation and the corporate code that's written by parliaments and signed by presidents that purports to be law. That is a blasphemy. But the true law of love. I don't know how we're doing in terms of time, but there's
Well, we have another
back,
half hour because this is a
okay,
full hour show for you.
Because you were talking about the powers that shouldn't be, they want to control absolutely everything. So 2020 was kind of the opening act for many of us, or the opening act of the tyrants, and being aware of what they're doing with the medical tyranny, which is why I wrote, it was called at the time, the COVID protocols, Upholding Your Rights in Authoritarian Times. And then I retitled it to Know Your Medical Rights, because I needed to write sequels. I realized that the medical tyranny was just one vector of attack among many. So then I wrote Know Your Lawful Rights and Know Your Financial Rights. And then I put them in a collection called Battle Manuals for Freedom. And then going back to what you said about being shut down by podcasters. One podcast I prepared for was about the power of prayer, and most of that got shut down. So as a response, I wrote a fourth book in the series called Know Your Spiritual Rights. So this is the most recent book. And in the back of it, I put a few short stories. And I think there's one that encapsulates all that we're talking about, and it's called The Parable of the Frogs. So it'll be a few minutes. I'd like to share that with you.
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay. The Parable of the Frogs. There once was a group of big, fat, greedy frogs gathered around a puddle, and in that puddle were many thousands of tadpoles. But the water in that puddle was evaporating, so the tadpoles were confined into a smaller and smaller space, and feared they might die before they could become frogs. As I said, the frogs were very greedy, and they did not want to share the land with the tadpoles, so they sucked even more water from the puddle, lest the tadpoles should survive to become frogs. Some of the tadpoles looked up and saw the wicked plan of the frogs and tried to warn their fellows, but most were too frightened to listen. A few did get the message, though, which the frogs did not like at all. "What if these tadpoles united against us?" they said to one another. "Then some would surely survive and become frogs, and who knows what chaos would ensue." So they decided the best course of action would be to promise survival to some of the tadpoles if they would attack the troublemakers in the puddle and silence them by whatever means necessary. The frogs also trained their recruits in how to persuade others that the real sources of their woes was not the frog overlords, but other tadpoles, such as those with different markings, or who preferred different ways to live. The frogs were very pleased with themselves when they saw the conflict this caused among the tadpoles, who formed into factions and attacked each other, so that things became even more difficult in the puddle. Yet some tadpoles still looked up and saw the plan of the frogs and could not be persuaded to keep silent about it. Then one day those who looked up saw flying in the sky above a big white bird, and though they did not quite understand its significance yet, sensed there might be salvation in it. So they leapt from the water and splashed the surface, hoping the bird might see them. It took a few goes, but a ray of reflected light did eventually catch the eye of the bird, who looked down at the pitiful scene below. "Oh, that's odd," the bird said to himself. "In our world, we guard our vulnerable, but these frogs appear to be doing the opposite to their kin." With that, he swooped down from the clouds, and the frogs, who had been so focused on keeping the tadpoles down that they did not think to look up, had no idea of his approach until his shadow was upon them. Some tried to flee, but they were all so fat that none found the speed to get away. This way and that, the bird's murderous beak and razor-sharp talons tore into the flesh of the helpless frogs until not one was left alive. And so that day, the tadpoles were liberated. Fresh rains came that replenished their pool, and they could now grow freely into frogs.
Wow. I love that. It's very fitting. And I like the fact that, you know, like, yeah, the frogs are like, okay, anybody that's against us, get rid of, and keep the ones, that are so-called compliant. That's what it feels like. So I like that. And yes, I don't know if I have that book, but definitely I wrote it down so I can get that book.
I probably made the ebook available to you. I don't think I sent you the paperback, though.
I probably have it in my stack. I don't have the paperback, but I actually have this file like this long of ebooks. So
yeah,
probably in there, and I will definitely find it because it's just amazing.
I'd certainly value the help because this book has only got one review right now on Amazon.com, and it's got 3 on Amazon UK. So it would certainly help to get the word out and to get it noticed.
Of course, and that information will also be in the podcast, so I'll link to it in, for both the UK and Amazon. And I will definitely make sure that this book gets moved up.
Thank you.
It's
a deep pile, so thank you for that.
Yeah, but people deserve to know that they should, know about you. They should read your work, and I feel that way for a lot of people, but you tell it how it is, how you believe, and that is it's just amazing. And I remember what was it, the one you did about, what was it, Obama? And
yes, Obama's Dream. That was the very first book I published.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. And of course, Elijah and the other ones, and I do go back and look at them, and every time I get your newsletter, I read it from top to bottom, and I get a lot of newsletters. And and yours are, I must say, some of the are the most interesting. So when I see something, I'm going to read it, and when I think that you have been wronged, I want to make it right for you. And I just think that, we've known each other for years, and people deserve to first know the truth. And any person of faith, I believe, would find solace in your work.
And I hope too, encouragement to take up the sword as well in a spiritual sense. Because I've subtitled this So it's Know Your Spiritual Rights, and the subtitle is End Times Weaponry for the Warrior in Christ. And thank you for encouraging me about telling it like it is. I used to be in and out of the corporate system. So for instance, I was with the Reuters news agency for several years as a financial journalist. And I was with Standard & Poor's writing articles about the insurance ratings situation and various other corporate roles. And I was always getting chewed up and spat out because someone who is forthright is not going to be the team player that they're looking for. So now that I'm not in that system and I'm not getting the corporate paycheck, I don't want to soften or tone down the message now that I'm not in that relationship.
And
So for instance, I mean, you hear people saying when they're making a video, oh, this is for entertainment purposes only, something like that, because they're trying to accommodate the censorship. But could you imagine Jesus beginning his message to the Pharisees when he's excoriating them and calling them a brood of vipers and sons of hell and whitewashed tombs and all of that? It's a wonderful speech that's written down in Matthew 23. But can you imagine him coming to the Pharisees and saying this is for entertainment purposes only? No, he's going to speak his mind,
right,
and tell the truth, no matter who he offends in doing so. And this is something I've come across in various other platforms like Twitter. I had 2 accounts with Twitter. They were both closed down, and they wanted me to jump through some ID hoops to get back on. Rumble wanted I wanted to know my birthday in order to be able to post on their platform and so on. And I won't, because, and Substack too asked for biometric data. I won't do it because, as I said, if I wanted to make those kinds of compromises, I go back and work for corporate China or corporate Britain or corporate America, where I was before.
right, yeah.
And Reuters in particular is the difference. When I was there, the organization had integrity, and for instance, if you wanted to make or publish an assertion at Reuters, you had to get 2 independent sources to verify it. But now Reuters is a lie machine, and it's just appalling what has happened to that organization.
Yeah, you don't know what it's sad because people don't know what to trust anymore. What used to be reliable or credible may no longer be that way. And
Yeah,
it's
I'd say,
terrible.
I mean, going back to what Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. So there's always been this element of media that's been manicured for public consumption in order to sway opinion. And one notable example of that is the 9/11 false flag event. And Orwell warned us in his novel 1984 that these kinds of events were happening and would happen. But now the extent of falsehood is off the scale, not just from the mainstream media, but also from the purported opposition, the fake opposition, the token opposition that is put there to try and limit the discussion, to draw off attention and dollars into limited hangouts.
Yeah, they
And
try
so
to create their own narrative for it.
one of the illustrations of that I come back to often is the floor of a Freemason temple. So the Freemasons being a cornerstone of secret societies. Right. Do you know what the pattern is on a Freemason floor?
I did, but now I don't.
So it's basically a checkerboard. It's alternating black and white tiles.
Mm,
So we have the very obvious villains. For instance, the World Economic Forum. So the ringleader, now is this historical moment. It's a time to shape the system. We need a great reset. And then there's his lizard sidekick. Humans are no longer useful. Humans are hackable animals. There's the Canadian poodle, the small fringe minority holding unacceptable views. There's the Kiwi vampire. The side effects are a sign that the vaccine's doing what it should. And there's the Euro Dalek. A better world also means a healthier world, and vaccination is our best chance to do this. So these are impersonations of the black tiles. But then you also have the white tiles, those who are put there as fake opposition, phony media sources that are pretending to oppose the black tiles. So part of our mission and the job of a Christian is to see through this and to heed Jesus's warning that of the wolves in sheep's clothing.
yeah,
Because the wolves in sheep's clothing are at least as dangerous, if not more so, than the wolves themselves.
that's true. Because when you think about it, wolves, they have that pack mentality, and they look out for each other. But if you have, like you said, a wolf in sheep's clothing, that wolf does not belong to a pack. It doesn't, it only focuses on who it can eat, who it can devour, and how it can sneak in and, kill all the sheep. And, I think with that, yeah, they're not the same as a wolf would be itself. I mean, wolves are beautiful, but they have their, every animal kingdom has their own type of, love and way they show it and support each other, even with their leaders. Not all of the, sometimes it's two lions, fighting to be, the Lion King, but, they're not, they want to both be at the top. So that's one thing. But, being like a spy or someone who is fake, that is the kind of person that is the most dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in a time of great deception. And this is something the Apostle Paul talks about too, because he says Satan masquerades as an angel of light, and his servants masquerade as servants of righteousness. And I sniff this stuff out all the time of this going on. And that angel of light, the mask it wears, is Lucifer.
Yeah.
So there's a whole fabric of Luciferian worship that is poisoning our societies.
Yeah, in a way that, and I think when you put it that way, it sounds like we are more in danger from those who are taking the mask of Lucifer than Lucifer himself.
The other danger is, or the other alarming aspect of this for me, is the sheep, people who comply, because they make it so much harder for those who do resist.
Yeah.
And I was shocked and horrified during COVID that there were so many voices calling for persecution of those who didn't make the same medical choices they did.
People got fired for it.
People got fired for it. And there were these calls to put people in prison or do away with them entirely. And famously or infamously,
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "Screw your freedoms."
Yeah.
And this is so alarming because when the tyrants try and pull the next stunt, instead of having our backs, instead of people having our backs and protecting us, they're going to be getting their phones out and recording the atrocities on social media and trying to get likes for it.
Right. Yeah. That's just, people say that we've progressed, but as humankind, we haven't really progressed very, very far. We may have different technology. We've had minority groups, including women, people of all cultures, having to literally fight to get their rights. And sometimes it took centuries for things to make change. Actually the other day, my son and I were talking, and he's a high functioning autistic, and he has this keen observation, and he never edits himself, which I love, and it annoys me sometimes. But um, we were talking and about the terrible thing that happened to me, and then we were talking about 9/11, and I was telling him that sometimes something bad has to happen in order for something good to come out of it. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. Even though I am suffering and I have some mental health problems and I have physical problems, the thing that happened to me changed my life, but changed it for the better. Me and my sons were safer, and we weren't in a place that was full of hate and violence and jealousy. Um, my husband was jealous of my success just because I had a book published, and that was in 2005. And that kind of started it and ended it as well. But I don't regret that day. I don't like reliving it, but I don't regret that day because of where I am today. I would go through everything I've ever been in my life just to be where I am right now. And I have this view that of the world that it how it should be, not how it actually is, but I'm not um I don't have blinders on. I know what's going on in the world, and sometimes I just don't want to know about it because it's just so terrible. And when you think about what information is being shared, um, that, you know, what is the whole truth? Because you know that there are things that when it goes on the news or whatever outlet, there are things that are being held back from the public. Maybe we don't need to know of every single threat that happens to our country or whatever. So we're not living in fear, but we should not be oblivious either. We should know the world that we're living in, and we should be able to use whatever passion, faith, beliefs to make our life the best that it could possibly be and help others who fall behind.
The thing is, a lot of these events that are causing terror are designed to cause terror. They are inside jobs. They are invented. They are fabricated to, it might be an agenda of going to war, for instance. And one of the aspects of that agenda, I mean, in the case of COVID, they were having people trying to get people terrified about a purported virus giving rise to a purported disease. And there were so many attacks on rights on the pretext of we're in an emergency. But one of the central themes of my books, Battle Manuals for Freedom, is that rights apply more during emergencies, not less.
Yeah.
And that's actually set out, is specified. If you want a document that says that explicitly, you can find it in the Syracuse Principles, which state that rights are not derogable for any reason, even for the asserted purpose of preserving the life of a nation. So that applies. Rights apply more during emergencies, whether that emergency is real or perceived or invented.
Right.
And I put it to you and your listeners that the emergencies are invented.
I would say so. I mean, I don't disagree at all. There are things that I think are exaggerated, so it could be someone stubbed their toe, but by the time they told somebody at that point, it's like, oh, I broke my foot or I broke my whole leg. It's and all it was just a simple, I stubbed my toe type of thing. And
Or something is fabricated from nothing. And
right.
one of the pieces I have in this book is about my experience with a crisis actor. So there was a guy, I was in a Shakespeare group in New York City in the 90s. And one of the guys in that group, I knew him better than most of the other attendants because I reviewed a comedy show that he did, and we were judges in a wit contest in the Shakespeare group. And his name is David Cole Wheeler. Well, he went on to play the role of a grieving father in Sandy Hook. That was one of his roles. The other role he played was a fake military policeman parading back and forth in front of television cameras on the very afternoon of the Sandy Hook reported shooting. Now, you talk about freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. So that article I've written 3 articles about it. The last one I wrote, which breaks the news that Donald Trump is involved and has obstructed justice in revelations about Sandy Hook. That's had 3 views on Facebook and less than 200 views on Substack. And this should be breaking major news.
Right.
But we're seeing the shadow banning on a, I don't know, plus 99% scale.
Yeah, I can see that. And I know that you're not the only one that, of authors that I know are, they speak truths and they uncover what's basically hidden behind, the curtain, I'll say, so to speak. I've interviewed this author, I've read several of his books, and it was basically, they were about, getting a terminal cancer diagnosis when it's possible that there are other implications, you know, the way you're living your life or different things. And he, um, I read his work and I have another one to read, and I found it very interesting. And he was very intriguing to talk to, even though people don't agree with him. But he pointed out things that are possible. Not
Yeah,
everybody is correct, not everybody is right, not everybody's opinion is factual, but everyone has the right to say what they feel. They have the right to question their leaders, their doctors. That's why we get second and third opinions. And never believe somebody, never believe a doctor who thinks they can fix you. Believe me, I know. I've had lots of doctors that try their best to fix me, and I don't want to be put on all these medications. I'll just live my life the way I can. Um, but to kind of wrap this up, I am so glad that I spent this hour with you, and I look forward to more. And yes, definitely, I have to move your book up on my list. Uh, so thank you for being on the show, and thank you, audience, for listening. If you wish to be part of be a guest on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Don't forget, if you wish to comment on this show or any show, comments are available, and yes, we will read them. Please follow this podcast on Spotify. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.
may I leave?
Thank you for watching this video podcast. Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast is a takeoff of Amy's Bookshelf Reviews website, and which does reviews and also author promotions. You can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com for more information. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe, follow, and keep listening. Thank you.